Hey, what's up, Liron here. I want to show you something really interesting. So, about 2 weeks ago, I did a video showing how to not overwork your watercolors. But with every advice, there's the counter advice, and there are no hard and fast rules in art. So today, I want to give you that counter point of view of how you can use overwork in your paintings, and we're gonna use one of my favorite artists ever, Joseph Zbukvic, a true master of the medium. And before I even get to show you what I think he's doing here, I just have to put out a quick disclaimer here. I don't mean any of the overwork here in a negative sense. I'm showing you how to use overwork. So this is not a negative feedback of me on Joseph Zbukvic, because his art is fantastic. Okay, so we're going to give the counterpoint on how to use overwork to your advantage. And let's start with this painting here. Joseph Zbukvic is a master of doing these things. Now, take a look at the entire scene. Take a few steps back. Take it in as a whole, right? But now let's zoom in on that shadow on the ground. Do you see how this shadow right here is full of details, full of what could be considered as overwork? It's full of all sorts of details of putting paint wet in wet and charging darker paint, then lifting, putting back water. And this is something Joseph Zbukvic loves doing, and I actually have proof in terms of showing you the process. I've seen it many times before done by him, but we will look at the video that most of you are familiar with. But look at this shadow here, right? Even if you look at the building, the shapes in it, there's a lot of reworking into the paint and into the paint. Now, who said that's overwork? He's using overwork, putting in more details, removing, coming back at a bit of an off timing on purpose to add details and add a sort of either structure or volume to an object or interesting detail. So let's look at another one and see this in the making. Look at this beautiful scene, right, of Venice. You can see, look at the buildings, right? Here's the key, and I will mention more of this later on. When you look at some of the darker shapes, he's doing a lot of activities within them, right? And you can even see granulation, you can see charging, you can see even the use of opaque paint, lifting, whatever it is. But he does have an overall clarity in the shapes, and that's something I want you to have in mind. We're going to talk about that in just a few seconds when we'll talk about context. But look at the water, same thing, tons of things going on there, tons of details. Why does it not feel overworked, right? When you do this, you may feel like I'm ruining the painting, I'm doing too much. But when he does it, it works, right? There is a trick to that, and I will show you a bit more of that in just a few seconds. Now look at the foliage here, to the right. Again, look at all of these. It even almost looks like he grabbed a paper towel and did this dabbing thing, and this could very easily turn to overwork. Yet it doesn't, right? And again, let's zoom out a bit. There are clear shapes here. Even though inside the shapes you have quite a lot going on, there are clear shapes, clear composition, everything makes sense, right? Let's look at another one. Look at this shadow here. This is actually a great example of how the buildings themselves are not overworked, but if you just go down a bit here to this cast shadow, what are all these brush marks? Like, are they necessary? I do see those beautiful blues on the left showing the, the edge, the sidewalk maybe, but all of these different touches here and there, are they really necessary? Well, let's zoom out. Look at that. Look at how clear this shape of shadow is. It's connected to the car. The car is pretty much dark aside from the headlights, and then it connects to the shadow. So where am I going with this? And we're going to look at, actually, let's just switch over to the video, and I'm going to show you from the wonderful Put Some Color in Your Life show by Graham Stevenson. You really want to check it out. If you haven't, there's a full process of Joseph Zbukvic there. And in this process, you can see how he does it. He's revisiting an area, going back to it. Now, what's the secret behind this? How can you use overwork to your advantage and still create a beautiful result that makes sense for the viewer? It is like everything in the context. So in the full context, sorry for bumping the mic, in the full context of the painting, do you have clear shapes that within them you can apply these principles, right? So when I showed you in the video, don't do this, don't do that, don't go back and revisit different areas that are already starting to dry. You could do that if it's contained within a shape that's in the context of the entire painting clear enough. And that's the trick here. Can you decide that a shape is going to be clear in the context of the entire painting, kind of like this cast shadow or just shadow from the building, on the road, by the car, connected to the car? It's still super clear. So anything in it, any variations in it, and it requires you to sometimes paint fast, but any variation in it still makes sense. Look at this scene here, for example, this entire beautiful building. I knew where that is and I forgot. I'm not sure if it's Australia. I'm not sure. Look at this huge building. Look at all these dots and lines and thrown paint, right? Very easily this could turn into, oh, I completely messed up this shape. It doesn't look good. But like he says in that same video I showed you, you need to have faith in it. If you have faith in it, you will be able to create something that the viewer believes and finds believable. So same thing here. Very overworked shape, but in the context of the entire painting, also very clear. Let's look at another one. This is actually a bad example. This isn't overworked. I don't know why I included this one. In my opinion, overworked, right? Look at the building on the right. Look at all the line of buildings, row of buildings to the left. Now, if you take a few steps back, the impression is quite realistic. Why? Got a hair? Because he's a master. Joseph Zbukvic is a master of using these revisiting of the wash to make it look more realistic, to push the value to be more accurate, to push the color even to be more accurate. He constantly does this. And if you've purchased his DVDs, you'll see this in action all the time. He keeps going back to an area and reworking and adding and removing. Doesn't hurt the freshness or impression one bit. Why? Because he has a clear idea and a clear plan that he's using when he's painting. Look at this building to the left here, right? He has a clean, but look at the sky, how clean they are. A light value, that's clean. So he has a very clean and clear idea, and this is the last one, of what he is painting and where the major shapes are. So how can you apply this? What are the takeaways, the practical things you can do to get this done? To me, a lot of it lies in simplicity. Can you simplify the entire scene into maybe 3 to 5 simple big shapes? In this example, river is one shape, all of the buildings in the background are another shape together, and they may flow into the river, so it's even one shape. The right section and the boats, or this shadow. Look at this cast shadow by the trees. Look at all this mess. It still reads well, because why? When you look at it really at the end of the day, there are maybe 5 major shapes here. So clear intention in the drawing stage. Draw the scene to make it as clear as possible for you to know what to paint. And draw it based on big shapes of value, as I always recommend. Once you have these big shapes of value, you can do quite a lot of damage inside the shapes of value. Add, remove, lift, charge, whatever. It started drying, you kind of messed it up, got a bit of a cauliflower. As long as the shape itself stands independently as still an individual shape as a part of the painting, it may still work. And the more you do this, the more you find out that, I can make these windows look like windows while I'm overworking or re-editing the shape. I can get all sorts of details done wet and wet and get an immediate impression. Kind of like the painting I've shown you of that junction where I did a quick demo for a student. Just one wash and touches of wet and wet and maybe a bit of lifting, and that's all you need, right? So the key takeaway is overwork. It's not the devil. You can use it to your advantage as long as it's contained. And you know what? That's not even a rule. Maybe it's not contained. Maybe you do overwork on all over the painting and it still ends up working, right? Because when you take a few steps back, it makes sense. Don't listen to my rules. Go out there and experiment. The one thing I wanted to make sure is that, because a lot of people watch that overwork video, is look at the other side and let's play a devil's advocate. Can you use overwork, quote unquote, to create the impression you want? Can you use the cauliflowers to create the impression you want? Can you do all of these things? The answer is yes, you can. So I want you to take that message. Go ahead. Don't be scared of overwork. Try it out. Try using it to your advantage. I really hope you enjoyed this one. I have to thank Joseph Zbukvic once again for just providing so much motivation to me personally and inspiration for painting, because his work is just breathtaking. I absolutely love it. I think he's a real genius in the field. And all of this is, of course, not a critique of his work. It's just fantastic, right? So I do have to do that. Check out the links to everything below, as always. The courses, the books, the whatever, the Patreon. You can find everything in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this one. And I will see you again in the next vid real soon.